you, Raj. All right. Good. Okay. Right. So, thank you so much. All right. So ethics is an attempt to guide human conduct, and it is also an attempt to help people in leading good life by applying moral principles. So you could see ethics, morality, values, these are all closely interlinked with each other, right? So ethics refers to well-based standards of right and wrong that prescribes what humans ought to do compulsorily you ought to do in terms of rights, obligations, benefits to the society, fairness, or specific virtues. But then you need to understand that all these things are extremely, good in an ideal world. But we live in a non-ideal world, and we will see some examples, okay, which will provoke your thinking. And I'm hoping that it will be a good thing to. That's why I said this is something unlike your other courses where you have to probably deeply ingrained. These are already there in you. You are just going to scratch on the this thing. Okay. So ethics is related to the issue of propriety, rightness and wrongness. What is right is ethical, and what is wrong is unethical. Very, very in the most simplest term, what is right is ethical, what is wrong is unethical. The words proper, fair, and just are also used in place of right, and it is ethical. Okay, so if it is ethical, it is right. It should be proper, it should be fair and just. So ethics is a matter of practical concern. It is not some theoretical thing, it's a practical concern. You see that on a daily basis, right? And it tries to determine the good and the right thing to do, choices regarding right and wrong, good and evil, the questions of obligation and value. I mean, many times you would have seen in the metro that young people are sitting and they don't want to get up when somebody old person comes, and it is and somebody else may get up and give the seat, so it all depends on your own stuff. So I'm not trying to blame young people. You're all young people. I'm not trying to blame you young people, but I'm just making an observation. Okay. So it is a question of obligation. Are you obligated just because you're young? Are you obligated to get up and give that seat to an elderly person? That's totally dependent on you. Some young person may think that okay, I am fine, I can stand for another 2 hours, let this old person sit down, right? And another person may say it's okay, I'm too tired, I don't want to be standing for another 2 hours, so I'm just sitting, it's okay. So there is nothing wrong or nothing right in that. It is totally personal choice, right? So ethics is to consider the practice of doing right actions, or what we may call as the art of living the good life, right? It is also defined as the science of highest good. Okay. Mackenzie, who is a extremely this thing popular social scientist, defines ethics as the study of what is right or good in human conduct, or the science of ideals involved in human life, right? Human life has certain ideals that I will not do this. Under no circumstances, I will not do this, or under certain circumstances, I might do this if it is helpful to somebody else. So our ideals are, as I said, vacillating. It oscillates between two different extremes. In essence, ethics is the study which determines the rightness or wrongness of actions. Okay. Now, applied ethics is the practice of ethics that aims to guide moral judgment governing the decision that we make in all areas of our lives. When we have heard of moral policing, right, and we feel bad when two individuals are doing something, the moral police people with that moral attitude come and say, you should not do this, you should not do that, even for that matter, when elders at our homes, when our grandparents say something, we often resent, we often get upset ki, why are they doing this? Unka zamana alag tha, our age, our the times we live are different. We should be doing this and all that, right? So it is a question of setting one's own standard of right and wrong, right? So it is extremely flexible. You still have those grandparents who are extremely traditional, and you have grandparents who have evolved with the time and they don't interfere much, right? So it's all very, very different. So ethics aims at systematic knowledge. So ethics is considered as science, okay, and every science is considered concerned with a particular sphere of nature. For example, mathematical science is concerned with numbers, chemistry is concerned with chemicals, biological science is concerned with life and life forms and how they work, how they do different things, activities, right? So as science, ethics has its own particular sphere, and it deals with certain judgments that we make about human conduct. It deals with systematic explanation of rightness or wrongness. We go through historical nature and decide what people did, was it right, or what people did, was it wrong, and why was it wrong, right? So ethics is called as normative science, whereas mathematics, biology, physics, chemistry, these are called as um, positive science. Okay, and normative science is concerned with what ought to be done rather than what the case is. Okay, it differs from natural sciences or descriptive sciences, which deals with facts and explains them by their causes. So normal natural sciences are mathematics, all the biological sciences, chemistry, and all that. So it is, ethics is different from these things. Okay, normative science deals with judgment of values, while positive science or normal this thing science deals with judgment of facts. Okay, normative science deals with what ought to be done, whereas the positive science is concerned with explaining what it is and why it is, right? So ethics is a normative science. Its principal concern is with human conduct in respect to relation to the conception of what is good and what. So you have time and again in all these slides, time and again, it kept on coming. What is good? What is right? What is just? What is unjust? That is what is the core question of ethics. Okay. So ethics is a branch of philosophical discussion pertaining to morality or a philosophical critique of morality, which is far from laying down guidelines for behavior. Right. So you can understand guidelines for behavior. Something might be striking a chord within you that in these pandemic situation, people have laid down guidelines for behavior. You need to have face mask, you need to have XYZ, you need to maintain social distancing, you need not travel if it is not necessary. All these are guidelines for behavior. Okay, the scope of ethics includes whatever has reference to free human acts, whether as a principle or a cause of action, or circumstances, depending on the circumstances. And each of them has its own subclauses, okay, which we will see as the course progresses. Okay, so ethics discusses the nature of human freedom and investigates what constitutes good or bad, just or unjust. It also inquires into what is virtue, what is law, what is conscience, and what is the duty, right? Do we have a duty towards our fellow classmates, our fellow citizens, towards our fellow countrymen? Yes, we have, right? So what obligation is common to all, right? What is the good in all these good acts? This is something that is philosophical. What is good in all the good acts? Okay, these questions lie within the scope of ethics. The sense of duty, the sense of oughtness or moral obligation, and the responsibility for actions are all included within the range of ethics. So ethics is extremely broad, right? And one typical example is that somebody may be a good artist. I just wrote a man. I'm sorry, a person could be a good artist or a good orator, but at the same time could be morally a bad person, right? Conversely, a morally good person may be a poor artist or a technician, or maybe poor in XYZ things. So these are two extremely opposite polarity. But on the other hand, you can still have a person who could be a good artist, who could be a good orator, and could be a good ethical person also, right? So you see a range, of behaviors, right? So that is what we'll be dealing with in our class in this thing, ethics. So ethics has merely to do with order which relates man to a man, or a human to human, which makes him as a good human. Thus, we find that although ethics is a branch of philosophy, okay, it is not only science, it is also a branch of philosophy. Okay. So why do we have to study ethics? The simplest answer is it tells us how to act rightly. It has the value in guiding people in the practice of right conduct or the art of living good life by imparting the knowledge of nature of the moral principles which can be applied to our practical life. Ethics may help people to avoid bias and prejudice. All of us have bias, all of us have prejudice, right? The moment somebody says, this person XYZ is a terrible person, he shouts at people, we immediately we get biased. Next time when we try to approach, we are colored by that somebody's judgment that this person may shout at me, this person may scold me, right? So we approach carefully, and then we evaluate over a period of time, and then we realize maybe that person shouted at some person for some reason, but so far it has been good to you, right? So we always have inbuilt bias and prejudices, right? The applied dimension of ethics is known as applied ethics, and it falls within the broad field of ethics. And it also has ethics can be further, classified as situational ethics, and many other forms of ethics. While meta ethics deals with the logical and semantic questions like what do we mean by freedom, determinism? These are all philosophical and meta ethical questions, which we are not going to deal with it in any way. Okay. Okay, so here is a question for all of you. Okay, and I think this is something that we had asked when you people had joined AAVA, if I'm not wrong. Okay, so the question is, are you able to see the cursor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
this is you. This is you. Okay, and there is a trolley that is coming. There is a train that's coming. Okay, and there are two tracks that are running. Okay, the normal during the normal time, the trolley or the train would take this course. Okay, and there is also a side track where it can, in case there is some issue, it can go and stand here and then come back and resume the journey. Okay, although you see people tied here on the track, it is not people who are tied, but they are working. Okay, just imagine the situation that you have one person working on this parallel track, and then you have five people working on this parallel track. Okay, now you have a lever, the train is approaching, you have the lever by which you can divert to either this one or to this one. Okay. So the question is, what will you do? There is no way you could stop this trolley from moving forward. Okay. You only have two choice. Either you can move it into this track or you can move it into this track. Okay. So what would you do? So Yuvraj, suppose you are this person. What would you do?
So,
Okay, anyone? Huh. Go ahead.
I'll try. Um, I'll try to shift the lever towards
Uh-huh.
the curve.
Uh,
Uh, and before that, I'll try to evacuate the person who's been tied in the track.
huh. No, you don't know. You don't know. You only know that in the normal track, about five people are working on, maintenance activity, and in the parallel track, side track, one person is involved in the activity. Okay. You only know that. Okay. There is no way that you could call them up or you could inform them. Okay. Now, what will you do? Where will you allow that trolley to go?
Sir, is there any other information on the people on the track except that they are working? Like, uh,
Hmm.
like
Very good.
there are
Very good.
age and
Uh,
then intellect.
Very good, very good,
yes, sir.
very good. So they are working, so that means they've been hired by somebody. Okay. Only thing, the information that is available to you is that these people are normal. Okay, and this person is deaf. Okay, keep thinking, keep thinking. Okay, in the meanwhile, okay. We will come back and revisit this problem. It has several complications. Okay, we will come back and rethink on this problem. We will look at a short video on the ethical theories. You are going to enjoy this. Okay. So this is from a coaching video, where he talks about a certain issue, situation, and then he discusses what the ethical theory could be. So is this YouTube video visible? Is this YouTube video visible?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
We're going to cover just two main things. I'm going to review the core ethical theories in the ACCA P1 syllabus.
Is it audible?
And try and explain them in simple
Yes,
terms.
sir.
Okay.
There are three that we're going to cover today. That's absolutism and relativism. We're going to extend that and think about deontological and teleological views. And we'll also think about Kohlberg's CMD theory, which is my favorite. For each of them, I want to try and build a little bit.
So there are many theories when it comes to ethical theory. There are hundreds of theories, okay, but these are something that is very commonly used, okay, and so we're going to look at only these theories for the time being, okay. I just want to make you people aware that when it comes to ethics, there are n number of theories, okay, and this is something that has been, that has caught the fascination of people right from the beginning, right? So that means this is at least several thousands and thousands of years old, okay.
Bit of practical exam confidence as well. So I want to see how they've been examined, how the marks are split, and how we can keep it simple in our answers. That's the idea. But let's start with a question. And first of all, who do you think here looks the most trustworthy? Is it man A or is it man B? Take your time. Man A looks a jolly fellow, looks to be enjoying himself, but I think man B looks a professional type figure. So is it man A? Is it man B? You decide. Well, if you chose man B, that's Bernard Madoff, who's currently serving an extended jail term for fraud, money laundering in the United States. If you chose man A, that's my dad. Okay, I trust him, but sometimes it's difficult to judge books by their covers, for want of a better phrase. Whether someone is moral, whether someone does behave ethically, is very difficult to see from simply looking at their faces. Let's try another question. Let's start thinking about you. Let's say you were in the office and you walked up a stairwell and you found some money lying on the floor. Let's say here it was a pound, a shiny pound looking up at you. What would you do in those circumstances? Would it be A, would you leave it alone? Would it be B, would you pick it up and spend it? C, would you pick it up and give it to charity and hand it in at reception?
Somebody's mic may be
when
open.
I ask this
Can you
in
close
class, I get a range of answers. I get some people who tell me they would leave it alone. It's only a pound. It might be stuck to the floor. I'm not picking that up. I get others who would say, I'll spend it. I get remarkably a high proportion who say they would spend it, but let's leave that there for the moment. I get a number who would say they would give it to charity, and some who say they would hand it in, and some who do something else. But what happens if it changed slightly? What happens if I said it was £10 that you found on the floor? What would you do now? Would you leave it alone now? Would you pick it up and spend it? Would you hand it in? For me, for a pound, I'd probably pick up the pound. I'd like to think I'd give it to charity, but I'd probably end up putting it in my pocket and spending it. £10, however, that's different. £10, from my point of view, that seems like a lot more money, and I'd probably hand it in at reception. So simply the circumstances of the situation has changed my actual ethical behavior, my moral decision, for want of a better phrase. Some of you may be saying, no, Paul, I'll do the same. I'd always hand it in, or I'll always spend it. Others, things will be more relative. If we said it was £1,000, would that change your decision? Would you now do something different? Same options. What would you do? Me with £1,000, I'd probably inform the police. So 3 different amounts of money, the same circumstances really, but 3 different outcomes. So that may be interesting, but why am I telling you this? Well, we're going to talk about ethical theories, but they simply are theories. In terms of actual ethical behavior, that depends on many factors. It could depend on the individual, and that's what we're focusing on today. We're going to focus on ethical theories and how they can impact individuals, how they're applied by individuals, how individuals think. But there are other factors if we were putting this into practice. We haven't got time today to deal with these areas of the syllabus, but it could be the circumstances of the situation. It could be the intensity, the moral intensity of the situation. Ethics is fascinating, and the more you drill into the subject area, the more personal, I think, gain and benefit you'll get from this syllabus area. But we must stick to the theories. So today we're going to cover 3 key theories and start with absolutism and relativism. Well, if I was an individual and I was taking an absolutist stance, you could say that I would follow one set of moral rules. I'd have a set of moral rules in my mind, and whatever circumstances came up in front of me, I would use those rules to decide on the most appropriate behavior. I believe those rules shouldn't change over time, and I believe those rules should be common to all. That's an absolutist approach. I could use the word dogmatic to describe an absolutist. Now, hopefully there's nothing here that really is difficult to understand. Maybe the word absolutism is, but the actual explanation is very, very simple. I'll come back to that word dogmatic just in a moment. Let's look at the other side, relativist. Now, a relativist would believe that there's many sets of acceptable rules in society, and those rules can change depending on situations or depending on time. So the rules can change over time. So these are 2 very, very different positions. And in an exam, it can actually be quite straightforward to pick someone who's adopting an absolutist position compared to someone who's adopting a relativist position. If I'm a relativist, I could say that you're adopting a pragmatic position. So what about those 2 words, dogmatic and pragmatic? Well, absolutists, we could say, are dogmatic in their nature. They would believe that there are some absolute truths that should be followed, a set of rules. A pragmatic person would believe that actually, there are no absolute rules, and each situation that we come to, we must assess. Take back to the coin on the stair. Some of you, and the money on the stair, some of you said, no, that money's not mine. I'm going to leave it there. I will not pick it up. I don't care whether it's £1, £10, or £1,000. That's my position. You're following an absolutist path. Me, I was much more relativist. It was only £1. It was £10. I'm going to hand it in. I think the situation changed when it was £1,000. So that's absolutism and relativism, but let's now see how it's examined. Let me just read through the question. So distinguish between absolutist and relativist approaches to ethics, and critically evaluate the behavior of Shazia Lowe, the accountant who accepted a bonus for her silence, using both of these perspectives. That was from December 2010, and it was worth 10 marks. Well, as you can see, the mark allocation was broken down. And actually, there were 4 marks for looking at and distinguishing the 2 types of ethical position, absolutism and relativism. So by using some of the words and phrases that I showed you on the previous slides, you could get up to 4 marks. An absolutist view doesn't change over time, whereas a relativist will be more situational. You then get marks for applying those perspectives to the situation in front of you. Here's a little extract from the answer. And again, I won't go through the whole lot, but I'm very much keen for you to keep it simple. So when I look at model answers, sometimes they scare me. Sometimes it's the length, sometimes the terminology used. But you must try and keep it simple. And let's just read through a little bit of it. An absolutist ethical stance is when it's assumed that there is an unchanging set of ethical principles. Well, that makes sense to me. That's just what we said on our earlier slide, written in a sentence, which should always be obeyed regardless of the situation or any other pressures or factors that may be present. Again, it's just using the words that I put on the slide previously and wrapping them together into a couple of sentences. Now, the next line, typically described in universalist ways. that makes my head hurt. Whenever I see something in the answer that makes my head hurt, makes me scratch my head, I can cross it out. Maybe not literally, but I don't worry about it. What you must do is look at what you do know and not worry about what you don't. There's 10 marks in this question. If you can get 8 good marks, you'll be passing with flying colours. Keep it simple. Don't worry about the bits which you don't understand. Look at the bits you do. Absolutist ethics tend to be expressed in terms such as it's always right to, it's never right to, or it's always wrong to. Again, I can understand that. That makes sense to me. And I can take that away, build it into my knowledge banks, and if a similar question came up, I could use that to help me construct my answer. Simple terms, simple language will get you through. Keep it simple. You can read through the relativist section yourself. So let me move on now to our next ethical theory. And really, we're building on the absolutist and relativist principles that we've just set up. We're going to look at deontological and teleological, but to do so, again, the words are awful, aren't they? To do so, let's use an example. Let's say you're taking a child to the dentist for some work. You know the work will hurt. And as you're walking, I've got 2 daughters, by the way, and this happened to me. My youngest daughter at the time, she was about 4. She had a tooth which was coming out. And she needed to go to the dentist just to get that tooth removed, one of her baby teeth. And I knew it would hurt, but I didn't want to tell her. And she looked up into my eyes and she said, "Daddy, will this hurt?" Well, what would you do? If you were in my position, your child's looking up, "Daddy, will this hurt?" Do you say yes, no, and why?
So this is a question that you will eventually face, or you may be facing a very similar question when some kid comes to you and asks you for your opinion, right? Which could be hurting the kid. What do you say? So just think of these situations, and what you say makes a lot of difference. Gaining somebody's trust is not that easy, right? All of you have experienced that by now, right? So these are all situational ethics, right? I mean, of course, all said and done, it is still theories. Okay, we are talking about different kinds of theories. So just keep focused. Okay.
Why? Well, when I ask this in class, some people say, "Oh no, you've got to tell your child, that it will hurt. You've got to." Well, why, I ask? Well, if you lie to them, then they won't trust you in the future. Well, they're making that decision on the outcome. They're saying that no, you can't lie to your child because in the future they then wouldn't trust you. And that look into the outcome is teleological. You're making your decision on the outcomes, the quality of the outcomes. Some people say, no, you've got to say no, because when you get your daughter in the dentist's chair, she might not open her mouth. It'd be worse trying to prise her mouth open to try and get the tooth out. And if you know my daughters, that's exactly what I was worried about. But again, I'm thinking of the outcome. No, I need to get my daughter's tooth out. To do so, I'm going to tell a little white lie. I'm going to lie here to make sure the outcome is favourable. The tooth comes out. I'll deal with the future later. So again, that's teleological. Now, some people may be thinking, well, you're all wrong. It's simply wrong to lie. You're not looking at the outcomes there. You're looking at the actual decision itself, the action itself. And to look at the morality of the action in its own right is deontological. So a deontological perspective looks at the action itself. Teleological makes an ethical decision based on the outcomes, the quality of the outcomes. Obviously, what did I do in these circumstances? My daughter looked up, said, "Daddy, will this hurt?" And I said, "Well, you better ask your mother." And I'm still in trouble for that at the moment. But remember, keep it simple. Where you're asked a question on deontological and teleological approaches, you're likely to have to give a little brief explanation of what each are. So keep it simple. Now, I didn't write the words. They're not mine. Don't blame me. But if I was asked to explain deontological approach to ethics, I'd use the words non-consequentialist theory. I'm sorry, but I would. I'd learn it because it is a non-consequentialist theory. The decision of whether an action is moral or not is not dependent on the consequences. I like the next 2 points. The moral right or wrong is not dependent on the outcome. Therefore, it's the means which are more important than the ends. Now, you could start delving into the works of Kant at this stage and look at his maxims. I'm keeping it simple. Okay, as soon as you start drilling into the maxims, especially trying to explain them in your own words, you can get muddled up and can get very confusing. I'm keeping it simple. I think this is enough for you to comfortably get through a question on this area. If we look at the other side of the fence, where the outcome drives the moral decision, that is teleological. That is a consequentialist theory. The ends are more important than the means. It's the outcomes which drive whether an action is moral or not. And that's deontological and teleological. How is it examined? This is from a few years ago, this question, a brilliant question on child labour. Mr. Hogg, you had to assess their belief that child labour, employing child labour, was always ethically wrong. And you had to look at it from deontological and teleological perspectives. One of my most favourite questions. Again, there was a substantial mark allocation, 9. And the starting point was being able to explain, demonstrate that you understand the two terms. Well, deontological is a non-consequentialist theory. Teleological is a consequentialist theory. Action drives, the action itself drives whether the action, the assessment of the action drives whether it's moral or not. It's the quality of the outcomes. And I can get my easy marks. And then you apply it to the case itself. In the question, it says that Mr. Hogg believes that employing child labour is always ethically wrong. That implies to me always. You can't justify it no matter what the outcomes. Well, that suggests he is deontological. But you had to assess it from both sides. So here's an extract from the answer. And it's got some of my most favourite lines in any answer written. It's a brilliant answer. But as you read through, look at what you know, not what you don't know. Keep it simple. So Mr. Hogg is demonstrating a deontological position on child labour. I'm telling the examiner that I understand and I can assess Mr. Hogg's position. He's saying that it's always wrong. I'm just using words from the actual question as well as probably in the scenario. He's adopting an absolutist rather than a relativist or situational stance. Deontological is aligned to absolutism. They're very similar. So I can make that statement, and I understand that. The deontological view is that an act is right or wrong in itself and does not depend upon any other considerations. Again, I understand that. It's simple language. Ethics is not difficult as long as you keep it simple. If child labour is wrong in one situation, it follows that it's wrong in all situations. Well, yeah, I think I can get, yeah, that's all right. And then things start to go wrong because of the Kantian principle of generalizability in the categorical imperative. What on earth does that mean? You have my permission to cross that line out if you wish. If you understand it, fabulous. If not, don't focus on it. Focus on what you know, not what you don't know. What you understand, not what you don't. If you understand 90% of the answer, you will pass with flying colours. Because child labour is wrong in some situations, it must be assumed to be wrong in all situations. Again, I think I can go with that. Again, I'll let you read through the teleological perspective yourself. Remember, that's from December 2008.
So this is a case description from a examination perspective. So that is why I thought I chose this video rather than some high. There is one more video which exactly talks for about another 45 minutes, different theories from different perspectives and all that. It's a good one. It's a good one. Maybe I will share that YouTube link you could go through. But I chose this one specifically because he gives out a situation, he describes the situation, and also tells you what is the right way of looking at that ethical theory and what is not the right one. That's why I chose this. Okay.
Brilliant answer. But focus on what you know. Focus on what you understand, not on what you don't. That means we can move on to perhaps my most favourite theory. This is Kohlberg's CMD theory. And what Kohlberg did was he wanted to understand how people made moral decisions. So it's the cognitive moral development theory. Or sometimes I've seen this written as the cognitive moral reasoning theory. So how people make moral decisions. And what he did was he took a series of dilemmas and gave them to children. And the children then gave a response, and from those responses, he developed his theory. So what I'd like to do is just give you a few moments just to read through the Heinz dilemma and come up with an opinion. Kohlberg wrote this in 1963. Therefore, the numbers, you might want to add a 100,000 to each of the numbers. So maybe 200 is $200,000. 2,000 becomes 2 million. What do you think? Should the husband have done that? It's not asking what you would have done. Should the husband have done that? Again, when I set this in class, I get a range of answers. It can get quite heated. Some people say, well, no, of course he shouldn't have stolen the drug. That's against the law. It's wrong. What would we have if everyone went around stealing? Others, well, of course he should have stolen the drug. That's what people would have expected him to do. It's his wife, for goodness sake. Some people would have said, well, yeah, of course he should. Human life is more important than property. Others, no, he probably gets sent to prison. My favorite ever line was from a child. I read this well, probably on the internet somewhere originally. And one child said, remember, he set these dilemmas for children from about 9 to teens. And a child said, well, he might want to save his wife if he needs her to look after their children. But he doesn't have to save his wife if he wants to marry someone younger and better looking. Only a child could get away with a statement like that. One of my favorites. Let's move on. In terms of Kohlberg, the theory provides 3 levels: the pre-conventional level, the conventional level, and the post-conventional level. I put a word or a couple of words for each level just to give us a signpost, especially for questions. With the pre-conventional level, I think of self, someone who's reasoning at this level 1, pre-conventional level.
Okay, so what does the class think? What should, given the situation, how do you think that what should the husband should have done? Did you go through the previous case?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so your thoughts?
Sir, can I answer?
Yeah, please.
So this is just my personal opinion, but I think since first of all it's cancer, okay, that is in the beginning itself, it's now also it's such a serious disease, and if you think about it, in that time period, then there was less development as well. So I think, most of the time, like, I think I have mostly a relativistic type of thinking. So in that situation, when the situation is life or death, then I think if I was in the husband's place, it would be, in my mind also, it would be justified for me to take the drug and then pay for the consequences later. Because in that moment, all I'm thinking about is my wife's, life, right? So because of that, I personally think what he did was fine.
Okay, very good, very good. Any other this thing view?
But I agree with Manav's opinion. I had the same opinion.
Okay, very good, very good. Any other opinion? So this itself, if you see, he was talking about a kid who said that, well, if they have children to take care, then he could do that, right? On the other hand, if there are no children to take care, or if the children were, grown up and all that, in any way, he knows that, the radium may bring maybe few more, maybe weeks of life, and eventually she is going to die. How would that fact change your decision? So we'll go back to Manaswini and Yukta.
Sir,
Okay.
is it specified that she'll die within a few weeks?
No, I'm
because
just
that.
saying that we all know that these are all the last stages. They're pretty much they have
Mhm.
exhausted everything, and maybe all this palliation or some of these treatments may bring you maybe few more weeks of life. What I'm
Mhm.
saying is many a times when we are confronted with situation, we probably need to ask
Mhm.
for more facts. More facts, and then probably it will help us to refine our decision. Right?
Okay. So based on what the child said, I
Mm.
personally thought it was kind of strange because not everybody gets married just to have children, right? There's a good chance they got married because they genuinely loved each other.
Right,
So it's
right,
not
right,
like,
right, right.
his mindset
Yeah,
won't
yeah.
be, oh, okay, my
No.
wife will die, I'll just marry somebody else.
Mm,
So
mm, mm, mm. It
I
is not a
think
question of
because of that,
getting married. Uh, Go ahead, go ahead.
it's the question of taking the drug. So the thing is, there are cases of cancer where
Mm,
they were in, like, let's say,
mm, mm,
stage
mm,
4, and
mm,
somehow there's a low chance and they did survive,
mm,
right? So
mm, mm,
again,
mm,
when you're looking from somebody who's so desperate, then you
mm,
will
mm,
automatically believe that, I will
mm,
believe that my wife has that chance to survive,
mm,
and if
mm,
I
mm.
don't give her this drug, then even that small
Yes,
chance is
you
going
will be
away.
guilty. Right, 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 right.
Yeah,
Very good,
yeah.
very good, very good. Okay, yes, Sam.
Sir, I feel like even if there's a chance of survival,
Mm,
if there is no like quality of improvement in
mm,
her
mm,
life
mm, mm,
before she took the drug and from
mm,
after taking the drug,
mm, mm,
there's no point in saving her life if she's
mm,
still going to be sick and bedridden.
mm, mm,
Like,
mm, mm.
and even if he stole,
Mm.
we
Whether he stole or he got genuinely, you think that if it is not going to change the quality of life, it is probably not worth it, right?
but if it is, then he can like take loans or even
Mm, mm, mm. Right, right. Whatever, whatever. So it all. So what I'm saying is this is a typical this thing which is extremely dependent on the situations, right? So each of us have faced some situation, where we think that if the situation was different, you would have acted differently, and because of the situation, you acted in some way or the other. So the point is, even in the trolley case, if given the choice that there is only one kid and on the other one there are five people working, you decided that okay, we would rather save, typical situation I'm saying, okay, we would rather save five people than one, right? And then when somebody said, no, no, look, that one person who is working is deaf, on the other hand, these five people who are working are normal, so they could jump the moment, because we all know the trolley or a train, they keep sounding the horn, right? So our own view on ethics keeps evolving as we get more and more facts. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Okay. So I just thought, we will start off with a few discussions. So our class on this professional ethics is going to be very different from your T-Bio 301, where, I speak and, you probably are more listeners, but this is the first class I had to introduce. So, it is going to be, less discussion, but as the time goes by, eventually I realized that students are more this thing. I'll show you a short video, and then the group starts discussing, and some wonderful things came out of all those discussions. So I'm hoping that you all will enjoy this thing. Tomorrow we are going to have this class at 1:15 to 2:10. Okay. So it will be a combined class with your seniors also. They just started a couple of weeks ago, and so we will combine, okay, but essentially we covered the entire ground in this short time, okay. So we will have this thing, okay. So see you tomorrow then, okay. So keep thinking, you could we could discuss some of these things in tomorrow's class also. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, right. Okay, take care. Okay, we'll meet tomorrow.